What is up, children of the internet? This is David, and this is Solid State. I'm going to look at a couple of Bible verses here. Hope you enjoy it. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know what you think. Don't be shy. Let me know. All right. We're going to be looking at some passages here, two of which are in the book of Job. Starting in chapter 35, the book of Job. Man, I got to tell you, this is an awesome verse. It's awesome. So Job chapter 35 verse 9, for all of you that want to know. Because of the multitude of oppressions, people cry out. They call for help because of the arm of the mighty. But none says, "Where is God my Maker, who gives songs in the night, who teaches us more than the beasts of the earth, and makes us wiser than the birds of the air." Right? That is Job chapter 35, verse 9 through 11. You know, we live in a time where there's a lot of concern about injustice in the world. People seem to be awash in the notion that there is some grave wrong that looms just beneath the surface, affecting everything. You know, that's why they talk about there's a culture. Oftentimes you'll hear it referred to, you know, there's this culture of something, or there's this other culture of this at play, a culture of corruption, sometimes you will hear spoken of. And you know, I think that this can seem to be the case because life, my friends, isn't easy. You know, life isn't fair the way that some people think of fairness. And life isn't always the way, life doesn't always play out the way that we would imagine it would. So from our own perspective, we think, well, this isn't fair. In Job chapter 5, in Job chapter 5, starting in verse 6 through 7. For affliction does not come from the dust, nor does trouble spring from the ground. But man is born to trouble, as the sparks fly upwards. I mean, that almost is the picture of metal striking metal. It is certainly the picture of ignition, when flames ignite the dry wood and the sparks float up into the cool air. Or an anvil being struck with a hammer, pounding out the dross. Sometimes this is what life is like. And the scripture says we're born to this. We're born to trouble. The problem with being so concerned with injustice is that it as though we are crying out under the burden and the load of difficulty. But the problem is when you're crying out under the burden, you're not really carrying the burden. You're failing under that burden. You're wincing. You're straining. You're giving up. Life is a struggle. And there comes a point in each of our lives where we begin to bear the burden. As the hammer that strikes the anvil, that shapes the metal, we begin to be shaped. Let me read this verse again in chapter 35. Because of the multitude of the oppressions, people cry out. They cry out because of the arm of the mighty. I am not trying to suggest that there isn't wrong in the world and that I'm certainly not suggesting that we ought not to right the wrongs. But we can certainly be overzealous in complaining and striving over what we see as lacking, what injustice we believe is lurking beneath every shadow and behind every corner. And as I said before, the problem with that is sometimes we just need to bear the weight. Learn to carry the weight. And it's hard to do. It's hard to do when your primary concern is that of complaint. When your primary concern is to complain about life and about the unfairness of life. When your primary perspective is that injustice is at hand, robbing you of opportunity, taking from you what is rightfully yours. This notion, this mindset, this heart of complaint doesn't bear up under the weight of difficulty. It doesn't it is to complain. To complain is by itself not to bear. But how do we bear what is unbearable? How do we deal with things that we haven't dealt with? When the branch is dry, how can the leaves be green? You know, a tree that is well watered will bend in the wind. But a tree that is dry will break in the storm. The solution that is offered here in this passage, it isn't to remove trouble. It isn't to dispel all injustice. It isn't to right every wrong. or remove the unfairness of life. But it says, but none says, where is God my maker? Who gives songs in the night, who teaches us more than the beasts of the earth, and makes us wiser than the birds of the air. The solution is to take heart when life is difficult. Take heart. I would suggest, who is this God who gives songs in the night? What does that mean? It seems to suggest that your heart is renewed, that you have discovered something new, and that you have believed in something new. Because this song comes from God who gives new things. And it isn't a phrase that God gives. It isn't a mantra that God gives. It isn't a positive affirmation. It's a song that God gives. People sing songs with all of their heart when they sing them. And all of the different genres that is music. One thing that all of these genres have in common is that when people sing their songs, they sing them like they mean it. God gives songs in the night, and He teaches us, and He makes us wise. He builds us up so that we can take the burden, that we won't break in the storm. Psalm 18 in verse 28. Psalm 18 is an awesome psalm. Go read it. Psalm 18 verse 28. Thou dost light my lamp. The Lord my God enlightens my darkness. The world is darkness. The world doesn't enlighten your darkness. But God would light your lamp. God would enlighten your darkness. These things we need. Not another protest in the streets. Not another piece of legislation. Not a hope of another politician. Or a promise of another news broadcaster of how they think life ought to be. You know, the more that you listen to the world talk, the more that you hear the same thing over and over and over. We have need that our darkness be enlightened. We have need that God light our lamp. We're going to close in Psalm 103. Starting in verse 4. Psalm 103. Starting in verse 4. Who redeems your life from the pit, who crowns you with steadfast love and mercy, who satisfies you with good as long as you live, so that your youth is renewed like the eagles. What thing in life has done this for you? The things that you've purchased, have they done this for you? People, music, teachers, books, what has done this for you? You won't find it. Because we are a miserable help to one another. That sounds like a bummer thing to say. We are a miserable help to one another. Our leaders are a miserable help. The people whom we superimpose the word hope on their poster are a miserable help. Who satisfies you with good as long as you live, so that your youth is renewed like the eagles. Who gives songs in the night, songs that when you sing, you mean it, so that you can live a life that means something. And hold a love within you that means something. Love that you choose. It's not a love you fall out of, it's a love you choose. Let me know what you think in the comments. I look forward to hearing somebody say something. Alright? Solid state. My name's David. We'll be posting again soon.